Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're digging into a really fascinating source file. It basically argues that the world of art, well, it's not some neutral space for creativity. It's a battleground. A sharp line is drawn, and it's all about class. All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll get a handle on the basic framework, how this source even defines art. Then we'll look at two case studies that are like total opposites. And to wrap it all up, we'll pull it all together and see what the main argument really is.
Okay, first things first, we have to get our heads around the foundational idea here. Forget what you might think about art being just a pretty painting or a catchy tune. According to this analysis, art is something much more fundamental. It's actually a way we process and understand the world. It's a tool, a form of human cognition. So think about it this way. The source argues that art is basically a method for understanding reality, almost like a sister to science. It's not this magical thing that just floats in the ether, born from pure inspiration. Nope, it's grounded. It's shaped by the real world, by the economic and social stuff happening on the ground.
And, well, if you accept that premise, this next part follows pretty logically, right? If art is shaped by the material world, then it can't be neutral. The source argues it becomes a battlefield, a place where the interests of different social classes are constantly fighting it out. All right, now let's get into the first big example. This is where we see the flip side of the coin. The source calls this the bourgeois antithesis, which is basically corporate-backed culture that it claims does the exact opposite of what we just talked about. Instead of helping us understand reality, it's designed to hide it. Okay, so this source lays out this supply chain, and it gives it a pretty intense name, blood coal. Here's how it breaks down. It starts with coal from mines in South Africa, linked to a figure named Patrice Motsepe. That coal, the source says, is shipped to the Israel Electric Corporation. Then, and this is the key part, the profits made from all this are allegedly funneled back to sponsor big cultural events, like the South African Music Awards. The argument is that this is a way of laundering where the money came from. So, what's the point of sponsoring a music awards show then? Well, according to this analysis, it acts as a kind of golden handcuff. It's basically a corporate system that's set up to find any music that might be, a little rebellious or oppositional, and then it just absorbs it. It strips out the dangerous parts, repackages it into something safe and sellable, and boom, any real threat is neutralized.
And a perfect example of this, according to the source, is what's happened to Bob Marley's legacy. The argument goes like this. Because his rebellion was more about a general vibe or a spiritual feeling, and not what the source calls a scientific, class-based program, it was super easy for the system to defend it, to pull its teeth. And what are you left with? Brand Marley, a commodity, a lifestyle you can buy, totally disconnected from the struggles he sang about.
Okay, so now we're going to do a complete 180. In total opposition to that last example, the source introduces us to a totally different idea of what art can be. This isn't art as a commodity. This is art as a weapon, as a literal scientific tool for survival. The story here starts not with an emotion, but with a very real, very physical problem, a weapon. The source points to the constant, torturous hum of Israeli military drones over Gaza. This isn't just background noise. It's described as a scientifically designed form of sonic violence, meant to cause extreme anxiety and psychological trauma in the population. So what's the response? It's just as material and scientific as the weapon itself. A music teacher in Gaza named Ahmed Muin Abu Amsha came up with something called the drone song. It's a fascinating process. First, you have to scientifically understand the drone's hum, its frequency. Then comes the intervention. He taught his students to hold a single, sustained note that actually harmonizes with the drone. The idea, as presented by the source, is that this act of acoustic resonance could be a kind of neurological counter-warfare, a way to fight back against the sound's psychological impact. And this is the absolute key difference, right? You can't separate this act from its life and death context. It's not a picture of resistance. It's not a song about resistance. The source argues it is the resistance itself. And you can't exactly sell that. You can't put singing with the drone that's bombing you on a t-shirt. It's impossible to turn it into a commodity like Brand Marley. Okay, so let's bring it all together. The analysis takes these two extreme examples, the Sama Awards on one hand and the drone song on the other, and uses them to draw what it calls an irreconcilable class line, a line that cuts right through the middle of all culture. And here it is, laid out side by side.
It's a pretty stark comparison. On one side, you've got what the source calls bourgeois art, its function to obscure reality, its method turning everything into a product. The result? A parasitic force that helps clean up money from exploitation. And on the other side, revolutionary art. Its function is to enable understanding. Its method is scientific practice. And the result is a productive force, a real tool for survival and liberation.
So the source leaves us with this really provocative final thought and completely reframes how we might look at culture. It's not just entertainment, it's not passive, it's a critical battlefield for the future of society. The argument is that art is always a weapon, and so the real question becomes, for which class is it being used?